Hi folks, and welcome back to another fly tying tutorial. So a couple of weeks back I did a live tying session showcasing some winter flies. Now I didn't quite get time to do the Humungus, so I owe you a Humungus, and here it is. So without further ado, let's get into it. The hook in the vise then is a Hackle H970 barbless hook. This one's at size 10, it's on a heavy wire and it's finished in black nickel. The thread I'm going to be using today is from Simplify. It's nano silk at 12 aught or 50D if you like, and it's in black. Now, as always with the nano silks, the first thing I want to do is get a touch of super glue onto the shank of the hook. Now, I've not put too much on, and what I'll do is just spread that with my thread, and I want to get, oops, went a bit awry there. I want to get a few turns on just at the front of the hook here, and then I'm going to come back approximately 2 to 3 millimeters back from the eye of the hook, and then I'm going to take away my rat's tail. Now I do all my Humunguses like this, and it's probably a bit bigger than some people tie them, and it will be slightly different to how other folks tie them, but everyone finds their own way. Now I'm going to be adding gold eyes to my Humungus, and what I'm going to be using is some toilet pool chain. And basically you get this in B&Q, it comes in big long reels, it's cheap as chips, about £3, something like that. But a word of caution, when you're preparing it, make sure you use some proper wire cutting pliers or some very, very old scissors. And always just keep a hold of it, and then it will come away in your hand. If there's any bits, sometimes some of the chain just sticks out, just come in again and take that away, so you've got a nice clean set of eyes. Then what I do is I lay on in line with the shank initially for a couple of turns, and once I've got them couple of turns in, it'll hold into position, and then I'm going to crisscross it figure of 8 style. Plenty of wraps onto the thread. Now notice I've still got quite a lot of room at the front of my fly there, and that is intentional. You'll need that room for the last wee bit. So I'm just going to get plenty of turns on this. I'll come to the front, and what I'm going to do is whip finish this. Now when I'm tying up these Humunguses, I tend to do this stage for 4 or 5 and then send them off to dry, because the next thing I want to do is come in with my super glue and just get plenty of super glue on this. I don't want them eyes spinning around the shank of my hook. And I've probably been a little bit not heavy-handed enough with my wraps. I'd usually have a lot more wraps than that. And then what I'll do is I'll send this off in its wet condition. I'll stick it on the side of my bench to dry, and then I'll carry on tying another 3 or 4 to that stage. Now I've got one here that I have already let dry in true Blue Peter fashion, for those of you that are old enough to remember Blue Peter. So I've got that on. Now I've got to recast on my thread, and again I'm going to add a touch of super glue to the shank of the hook before I do so. It really is my pet hate in flies, body rotation. It really annoys me, especially if I've spent a bit of money on a fly. It's rare I buy them, but when I do, if the body starts rotating, it really gets my the hairs on the back of my neck up. It should be a fundamental when you're tying flies, that the body doesn't rotate when you twist it in your hand. Now I've just gone past the point, and I've not quite reached the pronounced bump. So on the 970 there's a little bump here, which can come in handy at times. Now I'm going to get a little bump to the end here, and this is just to help me to prevent tail fouling down the line. Then in open turns, I'm going to come all the way back up to about 2mm before my beaded eyes. The next thing I'm going to do is add in some gold hank. Now this stuff here, it's hard to see on camera, but it is really soft. And what really soft means is it's going to be very mobile in the water. And that's what this lure's all about, really. It's all about mobility. Now what I want is about 2 lengths of the shank. I'm not worried about them straggly bits. That looks about right. I'll come in with my scissors and get rid of that bit. So I've got my gold here. I'm going to hold it in place there while I get a few turns. And once I'm convinced that's firmly held into place, I can start stretching it out and taking it down the body. Now what I'm doing is I'm working my thread down, looking for that bit where I had the little bump. And what I'm going to do next is any sort of loose ends that are here, I want to just take them away with my fingers. There we go. Now this stuff, I haven't got the packet for it anymore. It just lies in amongst some of my other odds and sods of shanks. But this is what I always use. And I did get it from Troutline. It's a very soft gold. I really like it. Now, next thing we're going to add the overwing. And what I'm using is some comp candy. This is the Blackjack Marabou. Now, unfortunately, Mark, who used to make this stuff, is no longer producing the Marabou. So, if you're asking, the next best thing that I can find, and it's very good, is Dave Downie's stuff is excellent. So, I've got a feather here. You can see I've been using it a little bit. And what I want to do is take between my thumbnail and thumb knuckle amount of Marabou. I'm just playing the juggling game there, but I've got to hold it again. And then I'm going to pull it off. Now, it's not come away for the stem as I'd hoped. So if that happens, you've pulled and then the stem's broken, just come in with a pair of scissors and take away the bits you don't want. Now once that's in place, you can grab it at the bottom. Now try and keep the length to its maximum, because you want maximum length here. Now I'm going to lay this up against my gold here, and I want it to be approximately the same length. So that's going to be about the maximum that I've ripped off. So I'm going to lay it up, I'm going to catch it just in. Now at this point I'm not worried about catching anything else other than this Marabou. If I've caught some of the gold in, I can sort that out in a minute. But you've got to make sure you get that Marabou in. Okay, so if there's some gold in there, don't be overly worried. And that's looking not bad. Now, I know for a fact there'll be people sitting watching this video going, all you're going to get is tail nips with that length of tail, and it needs to be much shorter. And they may well be correct for normal trout. And the Humungus, to my mind, is a fly that I use to target large brown trout. And by what do I mean by large? Well, anything over 4 pounds. And the last thing I'm worried about when a 4 pound fish is chasing down this is that I'm going to get tail nips. When these brownies come up, and how I would fish this actually, while we're on that discussion point, is I would fish 2 of them. And I would fish usually the silver and white version on the top dropper and this on the point. And to my mind, the black and gold for big brownies, it's very hard to beat. And I would fish it on where I could, I would fish it on a sweep line. Now what sweep lines do is they sink belly first, and what that allows you to do is search the water column. And very often when you're on the upward, so if you can imagine you're coming down and you're on the upward turn, that's often when the fish will take your fly. Anyway, I've digressed from the tie-in to the fishing, so let's get back to the tying. Next thing I want to do is tie in a little silver wire, and unfortunately I've missed, oh there it is, but it's no good to you because there's hardly any left and there's no label. But it's from Simplify, it's 0.01 gold wire, and I'm going to catch that in next. Just get that into place. Like so. Now, for the body material, and I've tried just about everything for this, and I can't find anything better than Dave Downie's original stuff. It's even called 6mm Chanel Humungus Silver. Now it says silver because I just keep the gold with it as well. But basically, it's got a yellow core, which I think is quite important. You get a different effect. Now a lot of the other ones that are available, and there are plenty to choose from, they have a white core, and it does make a difference to the fly. The colours are slightly different. So I'm going to catch that in just at the tail end here. Like so. Now, I don't really tie them much smaller than this, if I'm honest. I like them big because I want to target big fish. And what I'm going to do with my thread is just try and decrease that cigar shape. I want it nice parallel body, and then I'll park my thread just in behind the eye. Then I can come in with my rotary vise and just get the body down. All the way up to the eye, and then once you've got to the right spot, a couple of turns of thread to hold it into place, and then I can come in with my scissors here and just take that away, and that can go back in the packet for another day. So far so good. Now I'm just going to get myself organised here. Damp down my thumb and forefinger in my left hand. Just want to keep that Marabou and my gold nice and tidy. The next thing then is a grizzle hackle. Now I've tried all different, again, I've tried this all different ways, and I always keep coming back to this grizzle cape. Now I've already got a feather prepared here. I've stripped away some of the rubbish at the end, and I've got it to the point size wise where I want the hackle to be. So I'm going to lay that up gently at first. Just want it to sit right at the front of the fly. Then I can come over, make sure it's caught in, like so. Okay, so I'd like the hackle really to be out at about a 90-degree angle from the hook shank. It's not quite there, but it's close enough for government work. Next I'm going to come in with my hackle pliers, catch the tip of the feather, and what I like to do is bring the first turn pretty much over on top of itself. Then the subsequent turns you can bring up. Oh, Marabou's just misbehaving. If that happens, just again give it a little damp down with your thumb and forefinger. Keep it out of the way while you're doing this bit. Then bring your hackle all the way back. Now the silver version, the silver and white, it's very similar, exactly the same tie-in, only you're using silver instead of the gold, and white Marabou instead of the black that I'm using here. So I've caught that with my wire now, and then I'm going to come back up through my hackle And don't worry if you catch a few fibres in, it's not going to make any difference. Then once I've brought the wire, I'm going to bring it under the eye and over to trap that in. And then once I'm happy that's caught, a couple of turns in front, stop your thread backing up, hold down on your thread, twist away your wire. And then we can come in with our scissors. Oh, it's snapped away, perfect. Like so. Now, that's looking not too bad. Now, a lot of people would just would finish up here, and I used to finish mine just at this point. I would crisscross a couple of other times just to make sure that the eyes were solidly in there. But what I've started to do is I've started to add a little bit of, this is called ice dubbing, and it's in gold. Now, it's a lot thinner than what I've got in the back here, and what I like to do with this is just crisscross over the head to hide that black thread. So I'll bring my thread down and dub the gold on. This stuff, again, it's very light, it's easy to work with, and you can always add or take off as required. So first thing I'm going to do is a couple of turns that way, a couple of turns the other way. Try and make sure your hackle is pulled back from the fly. If you require more, it's much easier to add to dubbing. So I always find it's easier adding rather than trying to strip it out. Add a little more. And make sure you've got quite a bit on, because what we're going to do at the end is get some of that gold working for us in the body. So I'm looking for my UV resin. I'm going to add a little touch of that to my thread. And what have I done with? It used to be when I first started doing YouTube, I couldn't use a whip finish tool. Now I can't seem to do anything without it. It's strange how the monkey turns. Okay, let's whip finish at that. Give it a blast. And that'll secure your fly. Now, before I leave it be or it's ready for the fly box, I'm going to come in with a Velcro brush. I'm going to tease out some of them fibres. It's not a lot, it's just a little. As you fish the fly, it'll start to get scrappier as you go on. And that'll do it. Now, if indeed you do start getting a lot of tail nips, you can always come in and shorten this tail. But for my money, what wins with this fly is the mobility, and these beady eyes, they'll take it down and it'll make it jerk around. Very enticing. And the biggest fish I've caught brown trout wise have been on this fly.